Welcome to Monday Motivation, PowerPoints for Successful Christian Living. We're glad you're here to join us on this July 6th edition. And this week we are talking about the rat. The rat, part 2. If you didn't see part 1, pause this video now, go to our website, monday-motivation.ca. It'll make a lot more sense if you look at part 1 first. And my story about the rat, once you take a look at part 1, if you haven't already, is actually a powerful personal story about forgiveness. And last week I shared my story about what went on through my childhood, my teenage years, in our family situation with an alcoholic father. And from that, how the bitterness and the anger and resentment continued to grow. And even after I left home, those continued to affect me and have an impact on me. And the reason being, I had not exercised forgiveness. I was holding a grudge. I was hanging on to that situation. I was not letting go of it. And that anger and that bitterness was eating away at me. And the reason I call it the rat is because the rat is the offense, the whatever has occurred, and the anger, the bitterness, the unforgiveness, I compare to eating a poison. And when we eat the poison, it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't kill the rat. And that's how I came up with the story about the rat. So go check out part 1 if you haven't seen it already. And this week, I want to share the outcome and what I had learned from that. So after I had moved out, I thought everything's going to be fine now. The rat's gone. My problem's gone. But in fact, because I was hanging on to all of that anger and bitterness, the rat was still up here. And it was eating away at me. And over time, I could see the effect that was having, just eating away at me, making me unhappy, affecting my walk with God, because God says we have to forgive. And because I wanted justice, I wanted revenge, I didn't want to forgive. But I realized that it was only poisoning me and having no impact on the situation. So I started to realize, and as I continued to grow, as I continued to pray about it, I started to realize forgiveness is not only commanded, it's necessary. Why? Not for the other person's benefit, but for my benefit. I needed to forgive because of me, for my benefit. I was eating the poison. I need to stop doing that. So what did I learn? What did I take away from all of this? Well, one, if you're in a situation where sometimes you need to remove yourself from that situation. Once I moved out of the house, I could start and get a better perspective on what was going on because I was not right in the middle of the situation. Maybe it's appropriate, maybe it's not. If you're being victimized, you don't need to be a victim. Get yourself out of that situation. You don't need to be a victim. But sometimes removing yourself from the situation will help, because if it's stopped, fine. But if it's an ongoing situation, removing yourself will help you to gain a different perspective, because now you're not under threat anymore. You can look at your own response and your own feelings, your own emotions, because that is what you can deal with. You can't change the other person, but you can change yourself. So moving out didn't solve the problem, but it put me in a position where I could start and see things more clearly and from a different perspective. And of course, that was a process over time. And over time, I started to empathize with the situation. I started to realize, and I was maturing too, I was young, but I was starting to realize that the problem was not my dad. My dad had a good heart. He wanted to be a good father. He wanted to be good to his family. But the problem was not him. The problem was he could not make good decisions. He didn't have self-control because of alcohol abuse. So I started to empathize with his situation and realize that his heart was actually in a good place. Just he was unable to live that out because of the alcohol. And then I started to have empathy. I started to understand and realize that forgiveness was necessary. because he had a good heart. Why should I punish him? How could I help him move beyond that alcohol by punishing him? I couldn't. But starting to understand his situation helped me with that process of forgiveness. Now, we talked about a deep wound. A surface wound, you deal with, you wash it, a couple of days it's gone. But when you are in a situation that is ongoing over a period of years, those are very deep wounds. They take a long time to heal. The scars are there for a long time. So don't expect to just say, I forgive, and it's over. You will go through a process. And there will be times where that anger rises to the surface again. That bitterness rises to the surface again. So time and time again, you will have to say, no, I forgave. I'm not taking this back. But it's a conscious decision. When you get those feelings, that should be a trigger. Red flag, trigger, whoa, I am not going to take that back. I let it go. It's screaming at me, but I'm not taking it back. I'm going to leave it because I had let it go. Don't take it back. But realize that those emotions, those feelings will continue to surface. So it's a process over time. Expect that. Pray. When you start to feel those emotions, pray, Lord, help me to work through this. Lord, I've forgiven. You know I've forgiven. Help me to work through it. Prayer helps us align our state of mind with God. Finally, if it's appropriate, if it's possible, work towards reconciliation. After I started to forgive my dad, and that was a process over years that I had to repeatedly go through, but as I started to forgive him, I kept open communication. I didn't put myself in a position where I was going to be victimized again. It was arm's length, but I still kept communication open. And I worked on building a friendship with him. I was kind, I was polite, I was courteous. To the extent possible, I tried to respect him as my father. But by doing that, I was continuing to leave the door open to a relationship. But it had to be one where I wasn't going to be victimized again. So forgiveness is a process that will take time. Be ready for that. Don't take it back. Pray. Work on keeping communication open. Don't continue to be a victim, though. And with that, I'm happy to say that in the end, my father ended up giving up alcohol for the last 5 years of his life, and we actually enjoyed a great friendship at that point. I was able to introduce him to his grandchildren. He was able to have a relationship with his grandchildren. Many times I'd go to his house. He'd phone me up at work during the day. My computer's not working. Of course, he'd break something on it. And, okay, here, try this. If it doesn't work, I'll come by after work. And 3 hours later, he'd phone, it's fixed, but you can still come by anyways. But we enjoyed a great friendship. So it was worth it. One, I was no longer being eaten by the bitterness and the anger. Forgiveness helped me. And then by leaving the possibility open of a relationship, no guarantee it'll happen, but by leaving that open, we actually had a great friendship in the last years of his life. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. That's part of who I am today. So everybody is offended. Some people have gone through some really tragic situations, but there is a way to get through it. And the first step in that is forgiveness. I hope these two webcasts have had some meaning, some impact. If you haven't been through a situation like that, it has helped you understand maybe what somebody else is going through so that you can help them. But I would encourage you, don't carry bitterness and anger. It's a poison that will eat away at you, having no effect on the rat. Hope you're enjoying our Monday Motivations. Please like this video, subscribe to our email list, share with your friends. It helps us to grow. We like to do this, but we want it to have an impact. So share it, join our mail list, share with your friends. Have a great week. If you are struggling with forgiveness and want to talk about it, use our feedback form and reach out to us or reach out to a pastor or a trusted friend. But don't carry it. Have a great week. We'll see you next week on Monday Motivation.